going to play a group, man, that's hot right now, that's putting together a personality. They lean on their strengths and work to minimize their weaknesses.
Going deep, and he's got him. Pickens caught for the touchdown. Fire move.
He's going to be hit. He's going to be sacked.
We got a lot of work ahead of us. We're excited about that work. Starts in the classroom and put together a plan and work that plan and lean in on this opportunity in Carolina.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Matchup Show presented by Unibet. I'm Missi Matthews. We are talking Steelers and the Panthers happening at Bank of America Stadium on Sunday at 1 o'clock. Let's welcome in our panelists today to get things started. We have Mike Prisuta of the DVE Morning Show and Dale Lolley from SNR and Steelers.com. Merrill Hodge will be joining us shortly. Guys, we don't know who the quarterback will be yet for the Steelers on Sunday. Does that change the game plan?
I don't know if it changes the plan per se. It might change how they're able to execute it. If it is not Mitch Trubisky or Kenny Pickett, that means it would be Mason Rudolph. And I don't think Rudolph has necessarily poor mobility, but I don't think he has the mobility or the escapability of the other two. And Dale, I don't know about you, but I think this Carolina team is going to be coming. And I think there are going to be times where the quarterback's going to have to be in a feet don't fail me now type of situation and spin out of trouble or run out of trouble or extend a play because of trouble. And, if you don't have the guy best suited to do that, you might have to work around that.
Yeah, this Carolina Panthers defense is very good. I know maybe people haven't really thought that much about it because they haven't been a good team for most of the season. But they found the formula. They run the football. They don't have Sam Darnold try to do a whole lot, and they play good defense. And, that's a tried and true formula in the NFL. I'm of the belief it's going to be Mitch Trubisky at quarterback if Kenny Pickett can't play because of some of that mobility factor, because they've got guys like Brian Burns coming off the edge that can get after the quarterback a little bit. But this is not going to be a typical 2-5-8 teams going against each other. I think this Carolina team has figured some things out here in the second half of the season since the coaching change.
Mike, regardless of who the QB is, how did the Steelers get back to running the ball more against the Ravens? They were playing from behind, but the past weeks prior to that, 5 weeks, over 100 yards on the ground.
Yeah, I think part of that, Missy, was the Ravens are pretty good, and they know the Steelers pretty well. I think initially they have a chance to have better success running against Carolina. The other thing, it always comes back to third down, right? You have to have enough conversions to maintain possession time. And I think that would be a real good idea to do in this game. Carolina had 39-16, I think it was, in time of possession against Seattle last Sunday in Seattle. The week before, Carolina had the ball for 37 minutes against Denver. Part of the plan that Dale referenced, the kind of figuring it out in Carolina, is smash mouth ball control running and wear the defense down and then exploit that in the fourth quarter. So the longer the Steelers can hold the ball, the better, I think, Sunday.
Yeah, they ran the ball 46 times, Mike, against the Seahawks, and the running backs had a long gain of 16 yards. That's just consistently chopping wood and trying to grind things out. So, you have to be able to stop the run against this team to win that time of possession battle. And to win that time of possession battle, to keep them from running at your defense 46 times, you better run the football effectively as well. So I do think the Steelers need to get back to that. I thought they got away from it a little bit too early in that game against the Ravens. It was a one-score game for much of the second half of that game. So I do believe that they need to stick with it a little bit more. And Najee Harris got 2 carries in the second half of that game. That has to be different in this game. I don't know if that was because of the injury that we've seen him miss practice Wednesday with. I don't know if that was bothering him or not, but he needs to get more than 2 carries in the second half of the game.
Finishing might help as well. I don't know if Carolina is as maniacally committed to the run as Atlanta was. We saw Atlanta early in the year, down 21-0, still running the ball. Maybe if you can get a double-digit lead on these guys, maybe that's going to convince them to throw a little bit more. But until then, you're going to see run, and then you're going to see Darnold play action bootleg, and he's going to throw it short in the vicinity
about
of the line
3
of
yards,
scrimmage.
yeah.
They're going to try to find a tight end or a running back in space where there isn't anybody because all the defenders that cover that have been sucked in to try to help stop the run if they're running it effectively. So a lot of things have to go right. If they go right, you can handle these guys. But if you don't, you're playing their game. And with the momentum they have generated in the last month or so, that would be bad.
Absolutely.
The war of attrition, as Coach Shellman talked about on Tuesday during his press conference. Dale, for you, what is more important, stopping the run or establishing the run?
I think they kind of go hand in hand with each other, Missy. I think you have to, again, if you want to win that time of possession battle, you have to stop their running game, but you have to also run the ball effectively yourself. You know, the Steelers did move the ball against the Baltimore Ravens last week, but they made the mistakes. You're less prone to make those kind of mistakes if you're running the ball effectively.
Less likely to throw interceptions.
You're less likely. There are so many more bad things that can happen when you're throwing the football. And I think, you know, running the football effectively keeps you more on pace with your offense, converting some of those third downs and things of that nature, keeps your offense on the field. Over the last 5 games, the Steelers are at 50% on the nose on third down conversions, largely because they have been running the ball effectively until this last game. Now, they did it with the passing game a little bit more in this past game, but as we saw, that's where the mistakes come. They have to be able to run the football, and they have to at least, you're not going to completely shut down Carolina's running game. They are just too adamant about running the football, but you have to limit it. You have to get them into 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7 situations with a tackle for a loss or something along those lines in each possession.
All right, as we continue talking about the run game for both sides of the football, let's bring in Merrill Hodge, who knows a thing or two about that. Not in the Factor Back studio today, but Merrill, what's your biggest takeaway from the Steelers game against the Ravens regarding the run game?
Well, Missy, it's really probably every game is like this. The most important line in football is the line of scrimmage, and you got to be able to control the line of scrimmage. You know, if you want to be successful offensively, and if you don't want the offense to control you, then you need to control the line of scrimmage. And neither happened against the Ravens. Unfortunately, they weren't as consistent as they've been in the last 3 weeks, and how they've evolved. And you know, in both the games, the Carolina game in Seattle and the Raven game, you know, the thing that always gets things skewed is turnovers. You know, when you have as many turnovers as the Steelers have, that's just, it's going to nullify a lot of things that you did well. And it's going to make you a worse team than maybe you are. And then when you get a lot of turnovers, it's going to make you a better team than maybe you are, you know, and Carolina came away with some big turnovers, you know, early in that game, you know, and got good field position. And that plays a big role in those last 2 weeks. And so when you look at this matchup, I mean, controlling the line of scrimmage will be vital for both opponents. And whoever does that's going to win the game ultimately. And the thing that you just cannot control and you can't dictate or predict is turnovers. You know, if it's a clean game, you know, then it's going to be very heavily on how well you control the line of scrimmage. And the one thing Carolina does do, and they are committed to, similar to the Ravens, you know, they have a staple run that they like. Even though they do a variety of runs, you know, you're not a good running team if you just do one thing. They do a lot of good things, strong side, weak side, but they do a lot of counter with their runs. And counter to me is one of the best runs in football because it's such a flexible run for the runner, as long as he's patient. It's very hard on the defense because no matter which way they can take on blocks, you have an option as a runner. But you got to contain it. You got to keep it closed, and you can't let them to get movement at the line of scrimmage. I'll come back to that because that's what the Ravens were able to do. They got a lot of movement. You know, they secured double teams. They got people blocked, and they had running lanes for the backs, and they complemented it very well. That's one thing I really noticed with the Panthers. You know, their backs complement what they do up front. I mean, they give them a crack. I mean, they come away with 3 and 4 yards. And that's when you're a committed running team and you're really good at it. So it's a daunting task for the Steelers. Most people don't know about the Carolina Panthers because they're not in the division and they're in the other conference. But if you can put the game in Sam Darnold's hands, you got a shot because he's really an erratic thrower. He was like that at USC. That's really what drove him out of New York. That's really what drove him, you know, to the bench in Carolina. He's very erratic. He's not very fundamental in the pocket. Does a lot of, you know, unsound things and can put the ball in danger's way a lot. So if you can keep him make him a big part of this game and make him throw the football a little bit. That'll surely play out for the Steelers in their favor.
What's the biggest thing the Steelers defense needs to not do that you saw against the Ravens coming into this game, as you said, with the counter?
Well, I will tell you this. When you look at what happened to Seattle, I mean, they started just mauling Seattle. I mean, they were moving Seattle all over. They got defensive linemen 6-7 yards deep. They just mauled people, pushed them all over the place. That you can't have happen. The Steelers didn't had that happen. It wasn't that bad, but there was no control with their defensive line, and there was double teams, there was movement. They never played on the other side of the line of scrimmage. They were oftentimes a yard or two back. And when you do that consistently, it's just hard to win. It's just really hard to stop the run. Let's put it that way. It's very hard to stop the run. So I think their defensive line really has to be good, really knowing at the point of attack. And when those pullers come, really the most important thing is closing it quickly and spilling it. You never want them to get going north and south of the counter, because that's when it really becomes dangerous. So really squeezing it, closing it, forcing that runner deep, forcing that other blocker to adjust. If you force that in a counter, it can be disruptive, and you can disrupt what they're trying to do in the running game.
You mentioned turnovers clearly being a big factor for the Steelers offense against Baltimore, but after the bye week, we saw the run game come to life. What can they get back to that we did not see against Baltimore?
Well, I'll go back to, shoot what they did in Atlanta. If you watch that game enough, they absolutely controlled that game by how they moved the defensive front of the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, their defensive line very seldom were factors. They're always on the other side. And I will tell you this, the perimeter players played well too. When I say perimeter players, that's something that didn't go well with the Steelers, the tight end aspect of the game, the receiver aspect of the game. Those perimeter players, when they do a good job blocking, and that's oftentimes forgot about and not talked about. And so when it's a bad running day, it's all the offensive line. When quite honestly, sometimes it's the tight ends and the running backs or wide receivers on the perimeter not getting their guys and getting their job done. That's another thing that they've done well, that they didn't do well against the Ravens. So the combination of all of that will be really pivotal in helping them with the running game to get going. And then that defensive line, it starts there, it ends there, your edge players and how they can secure the edge, how they close it down, and how they just if they don't get moved off the ball, they just don't get mauled, and they force Sam Darnold to make more throws than they want him to make, then that will be an ideal situation for the Steelers.
All right, Merrill, we appreciate your time and your expertise as always. It's time now for the opening lines for Week 15 presented by Unibet, the official sportsbook partner of the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you're in Pennsylvania and ready to place your wagers on any of this weekend's matchups, just download the Unibet PA app or visit pa.unibet.com. Much more to discuss for Steelers and Panthers coming up here on the Matchup Show presented by Unibet. I'll rejoin Dale and Mike to discuss. We'll be right back.
Just get better at our technique. That's all we can do, and it's a process that's not just get solved with one game. You're constantly going to get challenged in your run game, and we got to continue to improve.
All right, welcome back to the Matchup Show presented by Unibet. That was Steelers captain Cam Hayward of the defense. And guys, we talked about the run game on both sides of the ball, but the physicality, something we always see with Steelers and Ravens, and it just felt like the Ravens brought that to the game where we did not see the Steelers as much. So Dale, do they bounce back from that, or do you think that was a one-game thing or what?
I think when you get embarrassed like that against a heated rival, and you weren't the more physical team, they know you weren't the more physical team, I think you do bounce back from that the next week and show, hey, we can still do that. We've got another game against these guys down the road. We better regain that physicality.
And soon.
Because that's Carolina's going to try to do the same thing.
Oh, they're going to try to do it all over the field.
Yeah.
I mean, you might see an offensive line formation where there's 5 guys to the right of the center. 8,
they call it Arby's, I think.
Yeah, 8 offensive line type bodies or tight ends. You'll see an offensive lineman in the backfield playing fullback, but it doesn't just stop there. I wrote down Wide receiver Laviska Shenault, he's kind of their gadget guy. Physical. The running back, Deontay Foreman, one of the three that you're probably going to see. Physical. The defense, the linebackers, physical. I mean, this team's flying around. They feel, I shouldn't say they feel, they look like a team that feels like it has a new lease on life. It has been through hell and back with the firing of the coach and trading of players and all kind of tumult and controversy. And now they've stumbled onto a method of operation that is providing results. And they're in a division where they're not buried at all.
Right.
They're still right in the thick of it. They got a little mojo going, and it's going to be a 60-minute game. I mean, go back to the fourth quarter, the game Merrill referenced against Seattle. It was 20-17. Carolina ran a 10-play, 74-yard drive for a touchdown, 8 for 68 on the ground. Then the next time Carolina got the ball, 9 yards, 44 yards for a field goal, 8 for 34 on the ground. They had 102 rushing yards, Missy, in the fourth quarter.
Right.
That's a game for some teams. So don't let them get started doing what they want to do and doing what they've been doing well of late.
Or especially at the end of games. You know, we saw it clearly against the Ravens in that fourth quarter last Sunday, but also you go back to the Patriots game where the defense just can't get off the field to give the offense another opportunity. So Dale, on defense, who needs to really step it up this week to make it possible to shut down the Panthers offense?
Well, I really think it comes down to, you know, Cam Hayward, Larry Ogunjobi, guys of that nature, controlling the gaps and allowing the linebackers to flow to the football. There's going to be gaps, because they're going to play 8 linemen. And you're going to see maybe the Steelers go to a 4 or 5 man defensive line at times. Wouldn't surprise me. To combat that, so you better win those battles up front, or you're going to be in for a long day, because these guys are going to run the ball and run the ball and run the ball unless you can get ahead of them. If you can get a good lead on them, as Merrill said, make Sam Darnold beat you, because that's been a pretty tried and true thing as well in the NFL, that he can't do that.
Yeah, I think the inside linebackers, too, really have to arrive downhill. I mean, it's not just getting in the gaps that Dale referenced. You got to hit the guy harder than he's hitting you. I thought Mike Tomlin made a great point this week when he talked about the pile moving the way the Ravens wanted it to and the backs falling forward. I mean, it's an extra 1 or 2 yards. So instead of 3rd and 6, it's 3rd and 4 maybe, or 3rd and 3, and now they're dictating. These guys are going to come hard. You got to meet force with force.
When you don't want Micah Fitzpatrick and Terrell Edmonds being your leading tacklers either. That goes to your point of who needs to help stop them when they're getting into that. But for the offense, Dale, in terms of being aggressive but not reckless, how do they walk that fine line?
Don't throw interceptions. That would be one way to do that. Run the football. They need to get back to the formula that they were having success with since the bye week, and that was running the ball and running the ball effectively. Don't expect your quarterback to go out there and throw it 35, 40 times. Let Najee Harris, let Jaylen Warren, let Benny Snell take some time off the clock, grind the clock against these guys, and then get them. Then you can run some play action against these guys and make some things happen. They got to run the football.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to that point, Missy, just know what down it is. We heard Mitch Trubisky beating himself up after the game Sunday. You don't have to force it on 1st or 2nd down. If it's not there, live to fight another day. Now, if you're trailing and it's late and it's 3rd down or 4th down and it's a possession down and you need a play, sometimes you got to try some things. But be aware of where you are in the situation and, know when to put that pedal down a little bit better than they did last Sunday.
Mitch Trubisky did find George Pickens and maybe not enough in the second half, but how do they keep him involved and how much more can they use him to help this offense?
I would expect, if I'm the Carolina Panthers, I'm putting J.C. Horn, who's their top cornerback and who will travel. I'm putting him on George Pickens because he's a bigger guy for that matchup. But that doesn't mean I'm shying away from George Pickens if I'm the Steelers. If he's in a one-on-one matchup like that,
like he is there,
like he is in this picture here, you go to him. You take that shot and you trust him to make the play. I want to see, whether it be. I wouldn't mind seeing him run some stuff over the middle too. He was pretty good at that in training camp and getting the ball in his hands and trying to get him in some situations to run after the catch as well. But you can't just forget about him. I think that is the one difference between Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. I do think Mitch is more apt to take some of those shots because he trusts it a little bit more because of his experience. Whereas Kenny, if he sees anything that resembles a double team, he's going somewhere else with the ball. Not that that's a bad thing, but you don't take those shots necessarily down the field to a guy who should get the football.
Yeah, I thought they had a good matchup with Humphrey for whatever reason.
It was a little fiery.
I think a lot of Humphrey, but Pickens was getting to him early in that game. If I find that again, I'm going to keep exploiting it until they make me pay for it. I guess I'd have felt
Georgia,
better.
Alabama thing.
I'd have felt better, I guess, if they'd thrown an interception on a deep ball to Pickens than a middle ball to Freiermuth. But
Yeah.
Bottom line, it's still an interception. But George Pickens is not established yet, but I think the word's starting to get out, and Dale makes a real good point. If you watch how people are starting to defend him, they know what they're up against. I wonder, do the Steelers know what they have?
You'd hope so.
All right, it is time now for our Yinz Chat predictive question of today. We're sticking with wide receivers for Deontay Johnson. Over under 50.5 yards on Sunday. Dale.
I'm going to go over that number because of what I just said. I do think that they're going to put J.C. Horn on George Pickens in this game. That could allow Deontay Johnson to run free a little bit more. And I'll say this as well, Deontay Johnson's had a couple of his bigger games when Mitch Trubisky has played. I still think it will end up being Mitch Trubisky on Sunday. So I'm going to trust that matchup and trust that quarterback wide receiver combination.
And very quickly, in terms of the Steelers injury report, Deontay Johnson is dealing with a hip injury. He did not practice today, and Kenny Pickett was limited for the second day in a row. Also, Pat Freiermuth did not practice as well. So, guys, thanks for helping us break down Steelers and Panthers, a 1 o'clock kick. This has been the Matchup Show presented by Unibet. Thanks to you at home for watching. We'll see everybody here next week.